Hey there you lot, welcome back to Fat Glenn's Fish. Friday night, I want to get inside and watch some footy, but I'm going to give you a quick spin around the room and talk about a couple of things that have happened since last time. See you soon. Oakley dokley, I've done some work with stripping fish and moving some fish around. This is my colony of electric yellows, and up until yesterday this was paired with my colony of red empress cichlid, the Rhodomelus taeniolatus Namulangi Island variant. I've had a bit of a run on production of the red empress, so I've put them to another tank, which I'll talk about in a sec, to get this group of fish out. And what we're looking at in front there is Placidochromis blue otter, and I've got a nice little group of these as well. And it's a fish that I'm pretty fond of, but I'd lost a couple of fish from this colony recently because I had them paired with my super red hongi, and I think it had just got a bit out of hand with aggression. I'd picked a few bodies out of that tank recently, and ironically when I cleaned it all up yesterday I stripped probably 100 blue otters, so they were still breeding, but there was a bit of issue there. So I've gone for the swap because the blue otters are a bit smaller than the red empress, so it looks like the yellows are pretty happy with the whole situation, and we'll see in a minute that the red empress are going okay too, so I think it's been a good move. I can't remember exactly whether I spoke about this in the last update, but I did do my Frontosa tank again recently, and we got a good outcome on Frontosa. I'll show you a little basket around the back that went nice. I've got crap all over the floor here, so I'm going to have to do this on one leg a bit as I go past. This group of fish has been bugging me for a while because they're important. Whoop, sorry. And I haven't had a whole lot of luck with breeding them. These are the silver streak ventralis. That's a good looking fella there. They're crazy fish in terms of everyone's shoved down one end, and I've been trying to mitigate that sort of craziness with running them with peacocks and whatnot. I've done it successfully in the past, but for whatever reason I hadn't been able to get them going for a good deal of time, so I've decided to give them priority. I did, when I did pull this tank apart and move a couple of fish out, we did have a couple of eggs in the mouth of one female. It looks like one there might not be too good, but hopefully I'll get a couple more to add back to the colony. But essentially what I did was get rid of the passengers, and I pulled out 4 males. Usually if fish aren't breeding, it's one of 3 things. It's your water's not right, your food's not right, or your colony balance isn't right. And I backed my water and food in because nothing had changed there, so we pulled out some males, and obviously we've got yet another clearly dominant boy there chasing everybody around, but at least for the short term it looks a bit more promising that we might get a result. I've done a crappy job today that I procrastinate about. If you saw the little short video I did a few weeks ago about this tank was the one where the rib let go up the top there, and so the glass was bowed out even though it didn't crack and the tank didn't leak. I finally fixed the tank, and I'm cheating a bit by keeping the fish in it, and they're running with a sponge filter down in the corner here that's bloop bloop blooping. I glued this about 4 hours ago, and I'll get to that after work tomorrow in terms of tidying up and probably refill it on Sunday. I did get some new fish in recently, and here's an example of, and I've got to thank my mate Grant for these. This is Placidochromis giselles, sometimes called Phoenochilus giselles. They're a lovely little, they're little now, they'll get big, but it's a beautiful hap species that I haven't had for a long time, and finally got a little clump of them, so we'll definitely turn this into something from the breeding point of view. So that's a nice outcome. I do have a plan to dump some fish in this tank that are pretty important, and I'll talk about that in a week or two, hopefully, when I've got them settled, because that's something a bit special. The fish that came out of that tank with this mob of Bertoni, we stripped a heap of these, and I'll show you a fry basket in a sec that's kind of crazy. I've bred the guts out of them, as they say, so they don't need to breed anymore for a while. And we went a bit same on the Horii colony. I think I'm close to tipping point on these, because the Horii are gradually getting bigger, and I've skated by up until about now with the use of the marble peacock, or the OB peacocks, as a dither. But what I noticed this time was, when I pulled the tank, I still stripped the same number of sort of Horii, like 7 or 8 females holding. But this is the first time that I've gone in where the peacocks haven't been holding, and I think we've now got the situation where there's a couple of the male Horii that are getting pretty big. So I'm at that critical juncture where I'm going to have to go to a bigger tank. I think I haven't pulled excess males out of the Horii yet, because I wanted that to help mitigate the aggression. But we've got a couple of serious candidates now that really fancy themselves and are going to start causing problems. So this is a tank I'm going to have to address shortly. Now this looks awful, this tank, but to me it's exciting. I've been growing out some Elonocranus de Winti that I hadn't had for a year or so, and what I'm excited about is what's happened in the last 3 days. Is this pit has formed, and we've got a dominant little male here that's starting to feel it, and I now need to get into this tank, because I'll throw a lot of fish together that are growing out, where they're not a risk of crossbreeding with anything. So I'll have a goal with the tank to be breeding, obviously, but a secondary use for the tank is that you can throw in smaller fish and have them growing out underneath. But what's now happening here is that the de Winti are going to take over this tank. They can be a bit aggressive when they're on song, and I've got something in there that needs to come out and go into the tank that we were looking at that's under repair. So that's the one I'll talk about next week, because I think it's going to blossom pretty quickly once it gets out of that situation. Here's where our Red Empress ended up that I was speaking about. Tank looks a little bit dusty because I added some new sand. The sand that was in here was a bit thin on the bottom. So this is now Red Empress over Super Red Hongi, with a few Hongi tumbling there. A bigger hap species, so even though there's a couple of Hongi in here that are pretty crazy, I think this already looks a bit calmer. And apart from adding the bigger hap species, I also added some of these terracotta pipes that I got recently, so there's a bit of extra cover for the small fish. Just in terms of what I mentioned earlier with some of the breeding that's gone on, this fry box is kind of crazy. That's I don't even want to try and count. There's got to be a couple of hundred little Bertoni cichlid in there, so that's enough to stock Australia for a while. And this is our Horii grow out tank, so we've got the bigger fish down bottom, but we've also had a good outcome with the Horii. I'd say there's 100 of those. Up top here is a box of I'll have to go up and just hope I get a shot, but that's Frontosa in that basket. We probably got nearly 100 again there, which is nice. And here's a little project that I've got to get to. These are some fish I've been growing on for a time. There's a little group of the flavescent peacock, the Alonocara Stuart Grandi Eusisia, and we've got a little boy starting to colour here, so that's kind of nice. They're a really beautiful fish. He's only small, but he's showing, you know, that nice dark dorsal with the white trim, and there's a fair bit of yellow throughout the body, which is a key feature. So given that he's colouring like that, I hope that they'll breed soon and get a spin through one of my I'll need to set up a tank and get them priority grow out. What else? We've got some yellows and red empress up in that little thing up there to add to the previous harvest. I've just done a water change on Luanda grow outs. These Luanda peacocks were in that tank around the back that were leaking, and they've bred pretty well for me, so I don't need to produce any more of these for a while. So they're gonna sit here a bit crowded, but hopefully they will be alright with that for a bit longer. We'll just finish off with a couple more of the new fish that I got recently. They're not going to look much because they're little, but we've got some young Capatochromis travasae lepingus here. At probably 3 to 3.5 centimetres. I'm guessing that's a boy just because he's kind of flexing. And we've got some Sumbu shell compressiceps. So thanks to my friends Grant and Bill for helping me out with some nice sexy little fishies. They're just going to grow out up here for a time while they get a little bit more size on. And last one I'll talk about, might take some finding because they didn't like me being up the ladder. We got some more speciosus. These are pretty cool little chunks of attitude. The black ocellatus. So they'll stay right in a shell. They'll come up as soon as they're looking for food and whatnot. I've just spooked them because I was up on the step then just filming. Really cool little fish. Hard to, not hard to breed, but hard to come by. We've got 4 of them in here. I'm still trying to learn who likes each other. And they're probably not far from deciding to pair off. I just need to pump some Daphnia into them and we'll get them firing. I think that will... Oh, one last one. Just not my cup of tea, as I always say when I talk about, but we did some work on the marble peacocks. I stripped 3 or 4 of these yesterday. This is actually fish that I'm growing out to get rid of, and they've sat here long enough because I haven't connected with the right people to the point where they've started breeding in the grow out tank. I don't know whether you'd call these, I think my mate Steve calls these blueberries, some of the males in there. I'm not a big aficionado of the various things we call these now. I call them marble when they're well blotched like this, but maybe without much orange base, and then I call them OB if they're marked like this but they're more orange. So let me know in the comments if I'm on it. Alright, thank you. I'm going to go inside and pour one and sit down in front of Hawthorn and Essendon. See you next week.